On the fongier sitting in the stock case, you can see where this area needs to be cut right here. What I do is I run a black pin along there. I know where to cut. Now, one thing I'd like to point out, if you have a 1993 frame instead of a 94, there's a couple differences in the motor. Very, very little differences. One is that instead of a 10 millimeter, you have a 12 millimeter piston and rod. The only other part is right down here on the front motor mount. I believe the old bolt size was 10, and the new bolt size is 12. So this is what you have to do to make it fit. If you put in the 10 into the 12, your motor will rattle a little bit. What you do is you need two of these pins right here, these stainless steel pins. It looks just like this. This pin will fit perfectly in here. You have one here and one on the other side of your motor, and then you run the straight front 8-inch bolt right through there, and it will work perfect. If you have a 93 frame. And here's another side of the fongier. These aren't a problem. You won't come close to these holes at all if you're careful. They're not a problem. Your problem lies right up in here. The back is not the problem. It's this front part over here that you have to be very careful with it. Because it's like Dave Toba told me once. He said, be very careful what you cut, Randy, because aluminum don't grow back. And I've always remembered that from Mr. Toba. He's given me some great advice last time I talked to him a few years ago. And like I said, this 50 millimeter. And here's a closer look. As you can see, this is your stock crank right here. This will give you an idea. The stock piston rod goes up about 2 3/4 inches, or about 8 millimeters, 8 centimeters. Now or you can see it right here. This is 2.5, about 9 centimeters. Now on your stroker crank, you'll notice it goes up to 3.5, or about, I'm not sure how. Anyway, it's about an inch taller. And you can see right there, it goes up maybe 7 to, it's 8 or 9 millimeters tall. And there's the difference in the stroker and the regular. I know I have a lot of pictures, but pictures are worth 1,000 words. And here's the side with the engine side with the alternator in it. There's another one. Now here what I've done is I've taken a blue Sharpie. Let's see if I can get a closer look here. I know it's kind of got some light in it. But I want you to notice I've taken the blue Sharpie and I've run it. I've put the crank on the bore, and I've run around the edge with this blue Sharpie to show you how much meat has got to be taken off. And you can see it's not very much, really. It's not very much at all. This is a stock SR50 AF16 engine. Here's a better look at it. You can see the circumference right there. It's only a millimeter or two all the way around. All you have to do is take off that much off of each side, and you do not, you can sand in here if you want, you don't want to, but you do not want to get anywhere in these bearing races. These are fit bearing races, tight pressed in. Do not neck any of this shit up, or this outside here. It's all got to be tighter than hell, and so no air can leak out. And like I said, I've taken multiple pictures of just about everything, so that the pictures I like I'll use, and the pictures I won't. And I'll show you. There's another side of it. What I found is I have a lot of pictures. And this is how I build my motors. I will lay out a diagram for what I need to do. Like I said, I put the crank on here. I take the blue Sharpie, I go around on each side. I have dummy bearings set in here in the case, so I know exactly where the center line is. The dummy bearings sit right here, and what they do is they show me the center of where the crank is supposed to be, so that I'm not off to one side or up or down when I do my lines. And then I use the dummy bearings on both sides when I go to fit the cases to make sure I've got clearance all the way around. And here's one of those pins again. You can order these for like $1, but you take that stainless steel pin, glue it in here, and then just run your front engine bolt through it, and you're done. That's all it takes to do, is to put a 94 engine in a 93 frame. Maybe even earlier too, but I have never used that, so I don't know. And here's a close-up of, this is a close-up of the fongier. And there's not really that much you have to cut, but you just don't want to cut too much, and you want to take your time. I've done it 3-4 engines, and I'll do it by hand because I don't have a lathe. And I have fun doing it. Now here's what this is what I was talking about. I have a dummy set of bearings right there. It means that those bearings they're instead of press fit into the block, they just lay in there. You can't use them for real because they won't work. But the outside of the bearings here, if you'll notice, if you look real close, they've been sanded. Okay, that should be really, really shiny. The outside's been sanded, and the inside race right up here has been sanded, so that I can drop the bearing in the case, leave it in there. Then what I do is I drop the crank into the bearing, and what this bearing does is it gives me the exact center of where the crankshaft is going to run, so I know exactly how much to cut on this side and on this side. And dummy bearings are real easy to make. Because you want to put in new bearings every time you go to rebuild. They're $12 a piece, and they'll just save you a lot of hassle. And there we have our stock. That's what a stock looks like in a stock case. Now on these stock ones here, let's see if I can show you. If you'll notice, the gaps here and here, there's only, or here, there's only a millimeter of clearance, okay, between the crankshaft and the case on the circumference all the way around. Now when you go to put in your stroker crank, that's all you need is a millimeter here, a millimeter here, because your crankshaft is going to be running press fit in your bearing right there on this side, press fit on the bearing on the other side. These are not going to wobble or go anywhere. As long as you have enough clearance and the crank runs freely all the way around 360 degrees, then a millimeter is all you need, or even half a millimeter. And I'll show you how I find that out. Now if you're going to build a stroker, and you want to go full stroker, I would suggest you go 50 millimeter. The 52.5 millimeter takes special bearings which are thinner. It also has a larger diameter of the crank weights, therefore it has to have a bigger diameter cut around the outside, and you have to be extremely careful because it's getting so close to those holes that if you cut through, you cut through. And here's one of my dummy bearings. Now I want you to notice something on these. The inside of these bearings right here, these are old bearings that I've taken. I've taken a Dremel and I've just taken off 1/100 of an inch on the inside. If you'll notice how rough it is in here. Okay, on a real bearing that would be beautifully smooth, shiny. It'd be beautifully shiny on the outside too. And I've done the same thing. Just take it off. And what I can do is I can hook my finger in there and pull it out. Okay? And if I need to clean out any aluminum particles or anything, then I put it back in there and I keep rechecking. I'll cut a little bit, I'll recheck. Here's the bearing on the other side. You can see it's a little bit rusted because these are my dummy bearings. They're only used for the guide, just for that centerpiece right there. And they work really, really well if you don't have a lathe. So we put the dummy bearing in, then we lay the crank in there, the stroker crank. We know that the crankshaft's going to rotate exactly right there. So this, by doing an outline around the crankshaft weights, you can find out exactly how much you have to take off. It's not very much, but if you're just doing one, you should be real careful. I mean, if you're starting out, you should be real careful anyway, because I'm not an aluminum welder, and I haven't screwed one up yet. I've had a lot of fun making them, but sometimes they take hours and hours and hours to make. It's always good to have a set of dummy bearings if you're building the stroker. Now on here, what I've noticed is that your plug will go right out into here, and it will come down and fit in this little tiny hole right here. Right here. Sometimes depending on the combination of crank and the plug, this crank will tap on the edge of the plug right here. So next time I'm going to take a little Dremel and cut out a little bit right where the crank gets close to it and avoid that. Remember what I told you about an engine will tell you what's wrong with it. And here are the three tools. There's this side fits on the small side, this fits on the larger side, and this one is what goes here and here. And if you'll have to buy them from Honda, and they will screw you. So if you're a virgin, you won't be after you buy the tools.